I met Evelyn under the most unexpected circumstances. It was during a time of great tragedy, in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. She had lost everything: her husband, her home, her sense of stability. She came to my town seeking refuge, and came to my town seeking refuge. Our paths crossed in a church that had opened its doors to victims of the disaster. The pastor had urged us to open our hearts and homes to those in need. At first, I hesitated. Inviting strangers into my house felt risky, but his words struck a chord. I was a 29-year-old single man, a doctor's assistant with long working hours, often leaving my house empty. My home, with its 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, seemed too big for just one person. When Evelyn and her 2 young daughters came into my life, everything changed. She was 28, stunningly beautiful, and radiated kindness despite her circumstances. Her daughters, ages 5 and 7, were polite and well-mannered. I offered them a place to stay, and from the moment they moved in, I found myself growing attached. Evelyn was a wonderful housemaid. She prepared breakfast for me every morning, her bright smile melting away the fatigue of my long shifts. Her daughters started calling me Dad, and the warmth of a family life I never knew I wanted began to blossom in my home. Over time, I even dared to imagine adopting her daughters. The closeness between Evelyn and me grew naturally. We shared late-night conversations, lingering glances, and eventually a kiss that set my heart on fire. Though she still slept in the guest room, I felt certain we were building something beautiful together. But life has a way of pulling the rug out from under your feet. One day, I noticed something strange. My favorite snacks, cashews and malt drinks, were disappearing from the fridge. Evelyn disliked them, and her daughters didn't care for them either. When I jokingly asked her eldest daughter about it, she blurted out a name I didn't recognize, accusing this mysterious man of eating the snacks. At first, I thought it was just childish imagination. But her tone was serious, and her words implied something far more troubling. "He comes over when you're at work," she said, matter-of-factly. Her words felt like a dagger to my heart. The idea of Evelyn being unfaithful hadn't even crossed my mind. My trust in her was absolute, or so I thought. But now, I couldn't ignore the gnawing suspicion that something was terribly wrong. Determined to uncover the truth, I installed hidden cameras in the house while Evelyn and the girls were out. Over the next few days, I anxiously reviewed the footage, praying I was mistaken. The truth hit me like a freight train. The recording showed a man entering my home while I was at work. He stayed overnight in my house, my sanctuary, eating my food, sitting in my chair, and, most painfully, sharing intimate moments with Evelyn. Betrayal was overwhelming. How could she do this after everything I had done for her and her children? I had opened my home, my heart, and my life to them, and this was my reward. When I confronted Evelyn with the footage, she broke down in tears. She admitted that the man was her ex-boyfriend from New Orleans, someone she had reconnected with after the hurricane. She confessed to lying about her husband's death, claiming it was a ploy to gain sympathy and support. Her excuses rang hollow. The woman I thought I loved turned out to be a stranger, and every word she spoke felt like a fresh wound. Though my heart was shattered, I couldn't turn my back on her daughters. They were innocent, caught in the crossfire of their mother's deceit. I rented an apartment for them, ensuring the girls had a roof over their heads. It was the least I could do. Months later, I learned Evelyn had spiraled into self-destruction, leaving her children in an even worse situation. I couldn't abandon them. With my mother's support, I began the process of adopting the girls. 6 months later, they were officially my daughters, and my life gained a new sense of purpose. The pain of Evelyn's betrayal still lingers, but I've found solace in the love of two beautiful girls who call me Dad. They are my light in the darkness, my reason to keep moving forward. If I've learned anything, is this: trust is a fragile gift, and love, when misplaced, can shatter you. But from the wreckage, it's possible to build something stronger, something real. Months passed since I took in the girls, and life slowly began to stabilize. Adopting them wasn't easy, emotionally or legally, but it was worth every sleepless night and every challenge I faced. Evelyn's deceit was a wound that took time to heal, but my focus on the girls kept me grounded. They brought a sense of joy and purpose to my life. I dedicated myself to giving them a safe and loving home, filling their days with laughter and comfort. Yet, in quiet moments, when the house fell silent, I often found myself reflecting on how everything had unraveled. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, Sophie, the younger of the two, hesitated before speaking. "Dad," she began, her small voice cutting through the room. "Mom used to take shots in her leg. I think she's sick." Her words sent a chill through me. Heard from Evelyn in months, nor did I want to. But if what Sophie said was true, it raised serious concerns. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I asked gently. She had a little box, and she'd use a needle every day. "I think it made her tired," Sophie explained, looking at her older sister for confirmation. My heart sank. I knew what Sophie was describing. Substance abuse. The thought of Evelyn battling such demons while raising her children was heartbreaking, but it also made me realize how urgent the situation was. I consulted my mother, who urged me to involve Child Protection Services, CPS. It wasn't an easy decision, but I knew the girls' safety came first. I provided CPS with everything I knew, from Sophie's observations to the difficult circumstances that led me to adopt them. In the months that followed, Evelyn lost her parental rights officially. It was a bittersweet moment. I was relieved that the girls were no longer under her unstable care, but the process left scars on all of us. The girls missed their mother, despite everything, and I had to walk a fine line between protecting them from the truth and helping them grieve in their own way. Through it all, my mother was my anchor. She stepped in to help me raise the girls, treating them like her own grandchildren. Her wisdom and love were invaluable as we navigated this new chapter of our lives. Despite the challenges, our little family began to thrive. The girls excelled in school, made new friends, and rediscovered their laughter. Watching them blossom brought a sense of fulfillment I hadn't known before, but the shadows of the past weren't done with me yet. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call. The voice on the other end was shaky and unfamiliar. "This is Evelyn," she said hesitantly. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The flood of emotions, anger, sorrow, confusion, was overwhelming. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my tone steady. "I need to see them." "Please," she begged. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm trying to change. I'm in rehab, and I want to make things right." Her words struck a nerve. Wanted to shield the girls from any more pain, but another part, the part that remembered the woman who once filled my home with warmth and hope, hesitated. "I'll think about it," I replied, ending the call before she could say more. That night, I wrestled with the decision. I wanted to protect the girls from being hurt again, but I also knew that cutting Evelyn out completely might leave wounds of its own. My mother's advice echoed in my mind. Do what's best for them, not for you. Eventually, I decided on supervised visits at a neutral location. The girls deserved the chance to see their mother, but I wasn't about to let her disrupt their newfound stability. When the day of the visit arrived, the girls were both excited and anxious. I sat with them in a quiet park, watching their faces light up when Evelyn approached. She looked frail, but sober. Her eyes filled with emotion as she knelt to hug them. The visit was brief and emotional, filled with tears and apologies. I stayed close, observing from a distance, ready to intervene if needed. Evelyn promised the girls she was working to be better, but I made it clear that their safety came first. He came first. As we drove home, the girls were quiet, lost in their thoughts. I asked if they were okay, and Sophie, ever the optimist, replied, "She looked different, but maybe she's really trying, Dad." Her words stayed with me. Evelyn's actions had left deep scars, but the hope in my daughter's voice reminded me of the resilience of love and forgiveness. Life continued, each day bringing its own challenges and victories. While the pain of betrayal never fully disappeared, it was tempered by the joy of watching my daughters grow into strong, compassionate young women. In time, I learned that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about finding the strength to move forward, one step at a time. Months after that emotional visit with Evelyn, the dust began to settle. The girls had adjusted well, and our bond as a family grew stronger with each passing day. Still, I couldn't ignore the lingering complexities of Evelyn's presence. She had continued to reach out, expressing remorse and asking for more opportunities to see the girls. Each time she called, it reopened old wounds. Yet, I couldn't deny that the girls deserved a chance to navigate their relationship with their mother on their own terms. I agreed to supervise monthly visits, but only if Evelyn remained sober and committed to her rehabilitation. The first few visits were tentative. The girls approached Evelyn cautiously, unsure of the woman she had become. Evelyn, to her credit, seemed genuine in her efforts to rebuild trust. She brought small gifts, handmade cards, books, and little trinkets. But while the girls grew more comfortable, I stayed vigilant. One evening, after a particularly quiet visit, Sophie turned to me in the car. "Dad, do you think she really loves us?" Her question caught me off guard. I paused before answering, choosing my words carefully. "She does," I said gently. "But sometimes, loving someone doesn't mean they always make the right choices. What matters is that you know how much I love you, and no matter what happens, I'll always be here." That seemed to comfort her, and she leaned against my shoulder as we drove home. Just as life began to feel routine again, a letter arrived in the mail that would turn my world upside down. It was from a law firm in New Orleans. The letter explained that Evelyn's ex-boyfriend, the man caught on the hidden camera, had recently passed away and left behind a small estate. To my shock, it included a handwritten note addressed to me. In the note, he admitted to deceiving Evelyn about his intentions and exploiting her vulnerability. He claimed that his presence in her life had been a mistake and apologized for any pain he caused. At the end of the letter, he wrote to take care of her kids. They deserve better than what I gave their mother. The letter sent a wave of mixed emotions through me. Anger, pity, and a strange sense of vindication. It confirmed what I had long suspected, that Evelyn's betrayal was rooted in manipulation and desperation, not malice. But it didn't change the fact that her actions had forever altered the course of our lives. I decided not to share the contents of the letter with the girls, though I kept it filed away. It wasn't something they needed to know. Not yet, anyway. As the years went by, our lives took on a new rhythm. The girls flourished in school, and I was there for every recital, parent-teacher meeting, and soccer game. My mother My mother, ever the pillar of strength, became their grandmother in every sense of the word, showering them with love and wisdom. Evelyn, meanwhile, continued her sobriety journey. She moved into stable housing and started working part-time at a non-profit. While our relationship remained distant and guarded, I had to admit she was trying to rebuild her life. One day, during a routine visit, Evelyn pulled me aside. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling, "for taking care of them when I couldn't. I'll never stop regretting what I did to you." I looked at her, searching for any sign of deceit, but found only sincerity. "I didn't do it for you," I replied. "I did it for them. Would ever have. I never thought I'd have room in my heart for anyone else." The scars left by Evelyn ran deep, and I was reluctant to let anyone into the life I had built with the girls. But fate has a way of surprising us. I met Lily at a community event. She was volunteering at a local children's charity, her warm smile and kind demeanor drawing me in. Over time, we grew close, bonding over shared values and a mutual love for family. The girls adored her. Sophie and a mutual love for family. Clara, now teenagers, welcomed her with open arms for the first time in years. I felt a spark of hope for the future. Lily understood my past without judgment. She respected the boundaries I had put in place and took her time building a relationship with the girls. As months turned into years, I began to see her not as a replacement for what I had lost, but as someone who could help us move forward. Looking back, the journey was anything but easy. It was filled with heartbreak, betrayal, and countless nights of doubt. But it was also filled with resilience, growth, and the unwavering love of two little girls who became my world. Evelyn's presence in their lives remained a thread, a complicated one. But I had learned to accept that some wounds don't fully heal. They simply become part of the fabric of who we are. As for Lily and me, we eventually married in a small, intimate ceremony. The girls walked me down the aisle, and my mother cried tears of joy. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace, a feeling that, despite everything, we had built a life worth cherishing. Because sometimes, even in the face of betrayal and loss, love finds a way to mend what's broken. Years passed, and life continued to unfold in ways I could never have anticipated. Sophie and Clara were blossoming into intelligent, kind-hearted young women, each with their own dreams and ambitions. Lily, now my wife, had seamlessly woven herself into our lives, becoming the anchor we didn't know we needed. Our home had transformed into a sanctuary of laughter, warmth, and hope, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had once defined it. Yet, the echoes of the past lingered. Subtle as of past lingered. Subtle reminders of the struggles we had endured and overcome together. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, my phone buzzed with an unexpected call. The name flashing on the screen sent a familiar pang through my chest. Evelyn. It had been months since I last heard from her. Her calls had grown infrequent as she focused on rebuilding her life. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello." Her voice was quieter than I remembered, tinged with something I couldn't quite place. Regret, perhaps, or maybe desperation. "James, I need to talk to you. It's about the girls." My heart sank. "What's wrong?" "They're fine," she assured me quickly. "It's just, I've been thinking about everything. The choices I made, what I lost. And I realized I've never truly apologized to them." I exhaled, my grip on the phone loosened. "They've moved on. They're happy. I don't think dredging up the past is a good idea." "But it's not for me," she said, her voice trembling. "It's for them. They deserve to hear it from me, to know I'm sorry for everything I put them through." I told her I'd think about it and ended the call. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed our conversation in my head, torn between shielding the girls from more pain and giving them the closure they might need. The following weekend, after much deliberation, I arranged for Evelyn to meet the girls in the park. Lily supported my decision, knowing it was a delicate situation that required careful handling. Evelyn arrived early, looking healthier than I'd seen her in years. When Sophie and Clara spotted her, their reactions were mixed. Sophie was cautious, while Clara, the more emotional of the two, ran to hug her. They sat on a bench together and Evelyn began to speak, her voice thick with emotion. She apologized for her actions, her lies, and the pain she had caused. She didn't make excuses or seek forgiveness. She simply spoke from the heart. Sophie listened intently, her expression unreadable. Clara cried quietly, holding her mother's hand. I stayed nearby, ready to step in if needed, but I let them have their moment. When Evelyn finished, there was a long silence. Finally, Sophie spoke. I appreciate you saying this, she said softly, but we've already forgiven you. We just want you to be okay. Evelyn broke down, tears streaming down her face as she hugged both girls. It was a bittersweet moment, filled with pain, but also the promise of healing. As the years passed, the milestones began to pile up. Clara graduated high school with honors and set her sights on studying environmental science, inspired by her love of nature. Sophie, always the practical, born with the practical one, pursued a degree in engineering, determined to make a difference in the world. At Clara's graduation party, Evelyn made an appearance. By now, her relationship with the girls had stabilized, and while it would never be the same as it might have been, it was better than anyone could have hoped. Watching Evelyn and the girls laugh together that day, I felt a strange sense of peace. Life had a way of surprising you, of taking broken pieces and fitting them together in ways you never expected. Years later, as I sat in our garden, watching the sun set, Sophie joined me, her face lit with a contented smile. Dad, she began, her voice warm, do you ever think about how different life could have been? All the time, I admitted. She nodded, her gaze drifting to the horizon. But I wouldn't change a thing. Everything we went through, it made us who we are, and I'm grateful for it. Her words stayed with me long after she left. That moment, I realized that while the past had shaped us, it didn't define us. What mattered most was the love we had built together, the family we had become against all odds. Because in the end, love is not about perfection. It's about resilience. It's about choosing to move forward, no matter how heavy the weight of the past. And as I sat there, surrounded by the laughter of my family, I knew we had done just that. As time went on, life carried us forward with its own quiet rhythm. The girls began to carve out their own paths in the world, and Lily and I found ourselves adjusting to a quieter house. Sophie had taken a job in a bustling city, designing innovative projects for a top engineering firm. Clara, ever the free spirit, was working on environmental conservation projects, traveling to different regions and sending us postcards with stories of her adventures. They were no longer the little girls I had taken under my wing. They were strong, independent women, ready to take on the world. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves outside painted the world in hues of amber and gold, my phone buzzed with an unexpected call. It was Clara, her voice tinged with excitement. Dad, I've been thinking, what if we start something together? A foundation or a project to help kids in difficult situations, like we were. Her words struck a chord deep within me. I'd always wanted to give back in some way, to channel the pain of the past into something meaningful. That's a beautiful idea, Clara, I said. What do you have in mind? Something small to start, she replied. Maybe scholarships or mentorship programs for kids who've lost their parents or been through trauma. Sophie could help with the technical side. And you? Well, you'd be the heart of it. Her'd be the heart of it. Enthusiasm was infectious, and before I knew it, We were brainstorming names, ideas, and ways to bring her vision to life. By the following spring, we had officially launched the Hope Beyond Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting children and teens in need. Sophie, true to her nature, built a sleek website and helped design an app to connect mentors with kids. Clara took the lead on outreach, forging partnerships with local schools and community organizations. For me, the foundation became a way to reflect on my journey and turn my experiences into something positive. I shared my story at events, spoke with kids about resilience and finding strength in adversity, and worked closely with families, navigating tough situations. Lily was my biggest supporter, offering her skills in organizing fundraisers and managing the day-to-day operations of the foundation. Together, we created something that felt bigger than ourselves, a legacy of love and healing. 2 years into running the foundation, life threw another surprise my way. During one of our events, I spotted a familiar face in the crowd. Evelyn. She looked different, healthier, more composed, and dressed in a simple yet elegant way that reflected her journey towards self-acceptance. She approached me cautiously, her eyes scanning the room before settling on mine. "I heard about what you're doing here," she said softly. "It's incredible, thank you," I replied, unsure of what else to say. She hesitated, then added, "I wanted to donate. Not much, but I thought it might help." She handed me an envelope, her hands trembling slightly. I accepted it, nodding. "Every bit helps. Thank you." "Evelyn." There was a long silence between us, filled with unspoken words. Finally, she said, "I'm proud of them, of Sophie and Clara. You did such a good job with them. They've grown into remarkable women," I agreed. And they still love you, Evelyn. They always will." She blinked rapidly, as if holding back tears, then smiled faintly. "Take care, James." As she walked away, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. Evelyn's role in our lives had been complicated, painful, but in her own way she had contributed to the journey that brought us here. Years later, as the foundation expanded to help hundreds of children across the country, Sophie and Clara joined me on stage at a gala to celebrate our accomplishments. The crowd's applause was thunderous as Clara leaned into the microphone. "This foundation isn't just about giving kids a chance," she said. "It's about showing them that even in the darkest moments, there's always hope, and that family is not just about where you come from. It's about who stands by you when it matters most." Her words brought tears to my eyes. In that moment, I realized how far we had come, not just as individuals, but as a family. The pain of the past would never fully disappear, but it had shaped us, guided us toward a brighter future. Together, we had built something beautiful, something enduring. Because in the end, love isn't about what you've lost. It's about what you've chosen to create in its place. As the years continued to pass, the foundation grew beyond our initial dreams. It was no longer just a small organization. It became a movement, touching lives across the country. Schools invited us across the country to speak. Local governments sought partnerships, and families in need found a lifeline through our programs. Sophie and Clara were thriving, both in their careers and their roles within the foundation. Clara's passion for environmental science merged seamlessly with her work, creating eco-friendly community spaces for children. Sophie's engineering expertise brought innovative ideas to life, from mobile counseling centers to apps connecting mentors with mentees in real time. At one of our annual conferences, I found myself stepping back from the crowd, watching as the team orchestrated every detail with precision. The girls stood together on stage, speaking to a room full of supporters and beneficiaries. Their confidence and compassion radiated through the room, filling me with a profound sense of pride. Lily joined me, slipping her hand into mine. "Look at them," she said, her voice soft. "They're incredible. They are. I agreed, my heart full. One quiet evening, Clara surprised me with news that sent a ripple of emotions through our home. She had been offered a long-term conservation position overseas, in a remote region of Africa. "Dad," she began nervously at the dinner table, "I've been thinking about this for a while. It's an amazing opportunity, but I don't want to leave you or Sophie or the foundation behind." I set my fork down, taking a moment to process. The thought of her being so far away was bittersweet, but I could see the excitement in her eyes, the passion that had always driven her. "You've always followed your heart, Clara," I said, smiling. "This is your chance to make a difference on a global scale. We'll miss you, but you'll always have a home here, and we'll always be just a call away." Sophie nodded in agreement, her voice steady. "You have to go, Clara. The world needs you more than we do right now." Clara's eyes as she hugged us both. "I love you," she whispered. Months after Clara left, Evelyn reached out with an unexpected request. She wanted to meet with Sophie and me. There was a sense of urgency in her voice that made me hesitate. But ultimately I agreed. When we arrived at the coffee shop where she had asked to meet, I was struck by how much she had changed. She seemed older, frailer, but her eyes carried a peace I hadn't seen before. "Sophie," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I've spent years trying to make amends, but I know I can never undo the pain I caused you and your sister. Deserve it." Sophie reached out and took her mother's hand. "Mom, we've already forgiven you. We love you no matter what." Evelyn smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. "I just wanted you to know how proud I am of the women you've become. And James, thank you for everything." It was the last time we saw Evelyn. A few months later, she passed away quietly in her sleep. While her death brought a wave of sadness, it also brought closure. The complicated ties that had bound us for so long finally found peace. Clara returned from her assignment overseas, just in time for Sophie's wedding. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, held in the same garden where the foundation had been born. Clara stood as Sophie's maid of honor, and I walked her down the aisle, my heart swelling with pride. Lily was there, beaming as she helped orchestrate every detail of the day. As the reception wound down, Clara pulled me aside, her face glowing with excitement. "Dad," she said, "I have some news. I'm staying home for good. I've been offered a leadership position at the foundation." Tears welled up in my eyes as I embraced her. That's the best news I've heard all day. As I sit here now writing these memories, the house is quiet again. Sophie and her husband are building a life of their own, and Clara is spearheading new initiatives for the foundation. Lily and I spend our days in the garden, tending to the flowers and marveling at the flowers and marveling. Life we've built together, the scars of the past remain, but they've faded, replaced by the beauty of what we've created. Evelyn's memory is a bittersweet part of our story, but one that taught us about forgiveness and resilience. If there's one lesson I've learned, it's this: no matter how broken things may seem, love has the power to heal. And when we choose to nurture that love, it can grow into something extraordinary, a legacy that endures long after we're gone. As the years long after we're gone slipped by, life carried on with its quiet triumphs and inevitable challenges. Sophie and Clara remained the lights of my life, though they had grown into their own worlds, filled with careers, families, and the rhythm of adulthood. Lily and I found solace in the routine of our days, cherishing the peace we had earned after so much heartache. But life, as I had learned, was never content to let joy go untested. It began with Clara. Her dedication to the foundation had always been relentless, but over the past few months, she had seemed increasingly distant. Calls became fewer, her responses clipped, and the warmth in her voice faded. At first, I thought she was simply overworked, but a nagging sense of unease lingered. One evening, after weeks of missed family dinners and vague excuses, she finally called. "Dad," she began, her voice trembling. I need to talk to you. I sat up, my heart pounding. What's wrong, Clara? There's a long pause before she answered. I've been diagnosed with late-stage lymphoma. What's the plan? There's treatment, right? She sighed, and in that breath, I heard the weight of her reality. There's a plan, but the prognosis isn't great. I didn't want to tell you until I was sure. But it's advanced, Dad. When Clara finally came home, Sophie and I were Clara finally came home, waiting for her, our faces betraying the smiles we tried to muster. Lily held her close as tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Clara, ever the optimist, reassured us with the strength she had always exuded. Firmly, and neither should you. Over the months that followed, our family rallied around her. Sophie paused her career to be by her sister's side, while I threw myself into supporting Clara through every appointment, treatment, and moment of doubt. The foundation became a beacon of hope, a reminder of Clara's legacy as she fought her battle with grace and determination. One day, as I sat with Clara on the porch, she broached a subject that I had been avoiding. Dad, she began, softly, I want you to promise me something. I nodded, unable to speak. If things don't go the way we hope, I need you to keep the foundation alive. It's everything we worked for, and I can't bear the thought of it fading away. Her words felt like a dagger, but I nodded. I promise, Clara. I'll keep it going. As the disease progressed, Clara's strength waned. She remained brave, her humor and warmth shining through even in the darkest moments. Sophie, Lily, and I took turns caring for her, savoring the time we had left on a rainy afternoon as thunder rolled in the distance. Clara called me into her room. Her voice was faint, but her eyes were bright. Dad, she whispered, do you remember when you first took us in? How scared we were. How you made us feel safe. I nodded, tears threatening to spill. You gave us everything. A home, a family, a future. I need you to know that no matter what happens, you were the best father we could have ever asked for. Her words broke me. I held her hand, unable to respond, as the storm outside mirrored the turmoil in my heart. Clara passed away a week later, surrounded by the family she loved. Her loss left a void that words could never fill. At her memorial, the foundation staff, friends, and even strangers shared stories of how she had touched their lives. It was a testament to her impact, a legacy far greater than I could have imagined. After Clara's passing, the foundation became both a refuge and a mission. Sophie and I worked tirelessly to honor her vision, expanding its reach and ensuring her name would never be forgotten. But grief has a way of lingering. In the quiet moments, I found myself returning to the memories of the past, the betrayals, the love, resilience that had carried us through. Evelyn's absence was a faint echo, her mistakes now a distant shadow against the enormity of what had come after. One evening, as I sat alone in the garden, Lily joined me. She placed her hand on mine, her eyes filled with the same love and understanding that had carried us through so much. You've done more than anyone could ask, James, she said softly. Clara would be so proud. I nodded, my gaze fixed on the horizon. She's still with us, I replied, in everything we do. Years later, as I watched Sophie take the reins of the foundation, I felt a quiet pride mixed with the ache of loss. Life had given me more than I ever deserved. 2 daughters who taught me the meaning of love, a wife who stood by me through every storm, and a purpose that transcended my pain. As I sat in the garden one final time, the setting sun casting its golden glow, I closed my eyes and smiled. The weight of the past had finally lifted, leaving only the beauty of what we had built together. Because love, even when tested by betrayal, grief, and loss, is the only thing that endures.